श्री श्री गुरु गौरांग गंधार गिरिधारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय। नित्यानंद विष्णु विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमान भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्यानंद विष्णु विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमान भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्यानंद विष्णु विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमान भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्यानंद विष्णु विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमान भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्यानंद विष्णु विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमान भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्यानंद विष्णु महाभागवत श्रील गोविंद बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नित्यानंद विश्व शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। उप्स। नित्यानंद विष्णु वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिल जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानु गौरिया गुरु वार्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम जय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्री वासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी कंग देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी बिंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। श्री सिद्धांत सरस्वती विदितो गौड़ीय गौरवन्वये भातो भानुरिव प्रभात गगने योगोर संकीर्तनाय मायावारतिमिङ्गिलो दरकतानुद्धृत्य जीवनिमान् कृष्ण प्रेम सुधाब्धिगाहन सुखं प्रादात् प्रभुं तं भजे। वन्दे भक्तिविनोदं श्रीगौरशक्तिस्वरूपकं भक्तिशास्त्रज्ञसम्राजं राधारससुधानिधिं। नमो भक्तिविनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगवराय ते। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। वृषभानुसुतान्वितवामतनुं यमुनातटनागरनन्दसुतं मुरलीकलगीतविनोरपरं भज गोद्रुमकाननकुञ्जविदुम्। स्मर गौरगदाधरकेलिकलं भवगौरगदाधरपक्षाचर शृणुगौरगदाधर चारुकथं भज गोद्रुमकानन कुञ्जविदुम्। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय देवि त्वां नायमं चरणन्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandavat Pranams. Let's see who is here. Nri Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Anadi Krishna Prabhu, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, and Janava. Hey, Janava. Sarveshwari Mataji, Yashoda Mataji, and on YouTube and Facebook. Um, I don't see all who's there. I'm guessing Indira Mataji and Raseshwari Mataji, and maybe Rohini Nandan Prabhu, Vidyalala Sadidi, and whoever else is there. Also, pranams to all the devotees watching in the future. Haribol. So we are continuing our reading of Bhakti-tattva-viveka. Yesterday we just read the beginning of the first chapter, and today I'm hoping we can complete the first chapter. I mentioned yesterday that I was going to read it on my own just so that I had an overview of the chapter and I'd be able to give a summary and all that, but as what happens normally when I make a promise, well, half the time I follow through with my promises and the other half I don't. And so yeah, I didn't. Um, yeah, but we can do a little recap of the beginning of the chapter and let's see if we can get through the whole chapter. This chapter is a bit long. The first chapter is 6,000 words, then that's usually we read about 4,500 words, um, around there. And yeah, so I think we'll be able to finish the chapter. Let's see. I'm gonna just have to not talk too much throughout the reading. Um, and the Bhakti-tattva-viveka is divided. The first chapter gives it explains the general characteristics of bhakti. Basically, it explains the verse Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dinavartam in full. So then we have a general idea of what bhakti is and what bhakti isn't. The Swarup and Tatastha Lakshan of bhakti. And then the second chapter is all about a semblance of bhakti. So externally, it might look like bhakti, but it's not exactly bhakti. One is pratibimba, which is just a reflection of bhakti, which has no connection to bhakti at all, but it looks like bhakti, and that's really bad. Like that's offensive even. We should never do that. And then the next is chaya bhakti, which is like a shadow of bhakti, which is connected to bhakti. Like, shadow is connected to the thing it's a shadow of, but it's not bhakti either. It's either mixed with karma or gyan or, like that. Actually, wait. Anyway, we'll become more clear on that when we read that section. And then the third chapter are what are the different attributes of bhakti. So at the stage of sadhan, then there's kleshagni and shubhada. There's the removal of offenses, and so many different auspiciousness comes into our life, and we get auspicious qualities like that. So that's on the stage of sadhan bhakti, and then at the stage of bhav bhakti is moksha lakuta krit and sudurlabha. At that stage, any kind of material suffering, liberation seems like nothing, like completely insignificant, and it is most rarely achieved. And then finally, at the stage of prem bhakti, the two next attributes, which is Sandrananda Visheshatma and Shri Krishna Karshini, that one experiences condensed um, Sandrananda Visheshatma. I don't know how to translate that actually, but one experiences condensed bliss and Krishna Karshini, and it attracts Krishna. And so that's those are the attributes. That's chapter 3. And then the last chapter is now we have a clear understanding of what bhakti is, what bhakti isn't, all the attributes of bhakti, all the different symptoms of bhakti. And then finally, the last chapter is, okay, now how do I attain the qualification to engage in bhakti? So that's how this book is organized. Um, and yeah, so let's jump into the first chapter. Um, And each chapter begins with a special Mangalacharan verse. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the first Mangalacharan verse, he says, I offer obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is naturally manifest with his four primary associates in the Panchatattva, and in whom the contrasting qualities of unity, abhed, and distinction, bhed, simultaneously exist. After offering obeisances unto the servants of Sri Gaurachandra, who are all pure Vaishnavas, I undertake with utmost care the writing of this book known as Bhakti-tattva-viveka. Being an insignificant and destitute servant of all the Vaishnavas in the world, the Vishva Vaishnav Das, in this endeavor of mine, I appeal for their divine forgiveness, for that is my only strength. You know what? I think we're going to take 2 days to read this chapter. Yeah. Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I mean, today and tomorrow. We'll finish the chapter tomorrow. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, most respectable Vaishnavas, our sole objective is to relish and propagate the nectar of pure devotion, Shuddha Bhakti, unto Lord Hari. Therefore, our foremost duty is to understand the true nature of Shuddha Bhakti. This understanding will benefit us in two ways. First, knowing the true nature of pure devotion will dispel our ignorance concerning the topic of bhakti and thus make our human life successful by allowing us to relish the nectar derived from engaging in bhakti in its pure form. And secondly, it will enable us to protect ourselves from the polluted and mixed conceptions that currently exist in the name of pure devotion. So we'll be able to relish bhakti and stay safe from, protected from all the different forms of polluted and mixed bhakti. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. So then he explains this verse, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhanavratam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. And yesterday we explained, we heard Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation on the two lines of this, the two last lines of this verse. I mean, lines 3 and 4. And I think that's like the first half of the chapter, and then the second half of the chapter he explains the first two lines. And actually, I remember Padmanabha Maharaj was saying one time, one of his first times, he stood up to explain a verse in front of Gurudev. Gurudev had him stand up, and um, Gurudev told him to explain the verse Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhanavratam. And so then he started explaining it in the order of the Sanskrit in the verse. So he started with Anyabhilashita shunyam and then Jnana Karma Dhanavatam. And then he explained Anukul, like in order. But then Gurudev said no. Like Gurudev stopped him as soon as he started doing it like that. And Gurudev said, no, whenever you go through this verse, whenever you explain it, or you should start with lines 3 and 4 and then lines 1 and 2. First, you start with explaining the Swarup Lakshan of Bhakti. What is the innate characteristics of Bhakti? And after you've established what is true, like what is Bhakti, then you can explain that the Tatastha Lakshan, which means it's not covered by Gyan and Karma, and that it is, any ulterior motives, and that it is, what is it? Anyavilashita shunyam and jnana karma. Sorry, that it is completely devoid of any selfish or ulterior desires, and that it is not covered by karma and gyan. So you explain that after. And we see that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's also doing it in that way. First explaining the Sarup Lakshan and then the Tatastha Lakshan. So So I think Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so let's see. In the above verse, each and every word has to be analyzed. Otherwise, we cannot understand the attributes of bhakti. In this verse, what is the meaning of the words Uttama Bhakti? Do the words Uttama Bhakti, meaning topmost devotion, also imply the existence of Adham Bhakti, inferior devotion? Or can they mean something else? Uttama Bhakti means the stage where the devotional creeper is in its completely pure or uncontaminated form. Our Gurudev would always give this example. For example, uncontaminated water means pure water, meaning that in this water there's no color, smell, or adulteration of any kind caused by the addition of another substance. Similarly, the words Uttama Bhakti refer to devotion that is devoid of any contamination, adulteration, or attachment to material possessions, and that is performed in an exclusive manner. The usage of qualifying adjectives in this verse teaches us that we should not accept any sentiments that are opposed to bhakti. The negation of sentiments that are opposed to bhakti inevitably directs us towards the pure nature of bhakti itself. If you say uncontaminated water, then that automatically means pure water. Perhaps by merely using the word bhakti alone, this meaning is indicated, since the word bhakti already contains within it all these adjectives anyway. Then has Srila Rupa Goswami, the acharya of the profound science of devotional mellows, employed the qualifying adjective uttama for no reason? No. Just as when desiring to drink water, people generally ask, is this water uncontaminated? Similarly, in order to describe the attributes of Uttama Bhakti, our preceptors considered it necessary to indicate that people mostly practice Mishra Bhakti, mixed devotion. In reality, Srila Rupa Goswami is aiming to describe the attributes of Kevala Bhakti, that's exclusive devotion. Chala Bhakti, pretentious devotion, Pratibimba Bhakti, a reflection of devotion, Chaya Bhakti, a shadow of devotion, Karma Mishra Bhakti, devotion mixed with fruit of action, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, devotion mixed with impersonal knowledge, and so on, are not Shuddha Bhakti. And these will all be discussed in chapter 2, all these other forms of Bhakti Abhas. So they'll be examined in sequence later on. What are the intrinsic attributes? What are the Sarup Lakshan of Bhakti? To answer this question, it is said that Bhakti is anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. Bhakti is the cultivation of activities that are meant exclusively for the pleasure of Sri Krishna. And so now Srila Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura will explain these two words as anukulya. Anukulya means that it's for Krishna's benefit. Everything that we do is wanting Krishna's benefit, wanting Krishna's ultimate happiness. And then Anushilan. Anushilan means activities. And we looked at that chart yesterday that there's a cultivation of no, it's not just activities. It's activities and feelings, like moods towards Krishna. So it's cheshta and bhav. And cheshta is further divided into two. There's active engagements and active disengagements. And that is combined with our feelings for Krishna, our bhav, with the mind, words like that. And so those two combine together and become anushilanam. That's cultivation of activities and sentiments for Krishna. And the word anukulya, that it's meant for Krishna's happiness and benefit, like that, is very essential, because if that word is not there, then Kamsa and Jarasandha would come under the category, because they're cultivating activities, like exclusively for Krishna. So yeah, so both words are completely necessary. And then the word anushilan is necessary because if you just have anukulya, then inanimate objects like pots are meant for Krishna's welfare, benefit. And so both words go together and then it's complete. Okay, I'm going to skip that. The word bhakti comes from the verbal root of bhaj, which means to render service. Therefore, thoughtful sadhaks should engage in the service of Sri Krishna with great endeavor, for it is only by such service that bhakti is born. That's from the Garuda Puran. So bhakti isn't just something, a belief or a feeling or something like that, but it's an active thing. It means to render service. According to this verse, loving devotional service to Krishna is called bhakti. It's Krishna Anushilanam. It's not just Anukulya Anushilanam, but it's Krishna Anushilanam. It's exclusively directed towards Krishna. Such service is the intrinsic attribute of bhakti. And so then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on to explain um, the three different aspects of the Paratattva, the Supreme Absolute Truth. There's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And in this verse, it's saying Krishna Anushilanam. So bhakti is when it's directed fully towards Krishna, not towards Brahman, not towards Paramatma, and even not towards other aspects of Bhagavan, different incarnations of Bhagavan, like, you know, Varaha, Vaman, but it's saying exclusively towards Krishna. I think, yeah, he made that point somewhere. And so, okay, now, I really don't know how to do summaries. Anyhow, so in the main verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, this verse 11, Anyavilashtashrunyam, the word Krishnanu Shilanam has been used. The purport of this is that Swayam Bhagavan Shri Krishna is the sole ultimate the sole ultimate objective indicated by the term Kevala Bhakti, which means exclusive devotion. The word Bhakti is also used for Narayan and various other expansions of Krishna. But the complete sentiments of bhakti that can be reciprocated with Krishna cannot be reciprocated with other forms, like Narayan and so on. This point can be analyzed in detail on another occasion when the topic is more suitable for it. For the time being, it is necessary to understand that the Supreme Lord and his Bhagavan feature is the only object of bhakti. Although the Supreme Absolute Truth is one, it is manifested in three forms, that is, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Those who try to perceive the absolute truth through the cultivation of knowledge, gyan, cannot realize anything beyond Brahman. Through such spiritual endeavor, they try to cross the material existence by negation of the qualities of the material world, a process known as neti, neti. So Bhagavan doesn't have any material hands. He doesn't have any material form. He doesn't have any material, minds like that. So he's nothing material. But then what about the positive? What about his transcendental form, his transcendental, like that? But no, it just talks about negating all the material things. Thus, they imagine Brahman to be inconceivable, unmanifest, formless, and immutable. But merely imagining the absence of material qualities does not grant one factual realization of the absolute truth. Such spiritualists think that because the names, forms, qualities, and activities in the material world are all temporary and painful, Brahman, which exists beyond the contamination of matter, cannot possess eternal names and eternal form, qualities, pastimes, and so on. They argue on the basis of evidence from the Shrutis, which emphasize the absence of material attributes in the Supreme, that the absolute truth is beyond the purview of mind and words, and that it has no ears, limbs, or other bodily parts. These arguments have some place, but they can be settled by analyzing the statement of Advaita Acharya found in Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natak, written by Kavi Karnapur. And we read this verse yesterday already. But this verse, the statement of Advaita Acharya is, in whatever statements from the Shrutis, where the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth is indicated, in the very same statements, the personal aspect is also mentioned. By carefully analyzing all the statements from the Shrutis as a whole, then we can see that the personal aspect is emphasized more. For example, one Shruti says that the absolute truth has no hands, no legs, and no eyes. But we understand that he does everything. He travels everywhere, and he sees everything. The pure understanding of the statement is that he doesn't have material hands, legs, eyes, and so on, as conditioned souls do. His form is transcendental, meaning that it is beyond the 24 elements of material nature and purely spiritual. By the cultivation of Gyan, it will appear that impersonal Brahman is the supreme truth. Here, the subtlety is that Gyan itself is material, meaning in the material world, whatever knowledge we acquire, or whatever philosophical principle, whatever siddhanta we establish, is done by depending solely upon material attributes. Therefore, either that principle is material, or by applying the process of negation of the material,
vyatirek, neti neti, we conceive of a principle that is the opposite of gross matter. But by this method, one cannot achieve the factual supreme truth. We just understand the negative aspect. What about the positive aspect? In his Bhakti Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami has outlines the relative truth that is attained by those who pursue the path of impersonal knowledge as follows. Um, I'm not going to read all the Sanskrit here. Let's read the first sentence. But yeah. So, Pratama Shrotrinam hi vivekas tavan eva yavata jaratirtam chinmatram vastupastitam bhavati. And then, yeah, there's a whole bunch more, but we'll just read the translation. In the beginning, so Srila Jiva Goswami is saying, in the beginning, the students who are pursuing the path of Gyan require sufficient discrimination to comprehend the existence of a transcendent entity, Chinmoy Vastu, that is beyond the contamination of gross matter. Although the specific attributes of Godhead established by the potencies inherent within the Lord's very nature are intrinsically present within that transcendent entity, the adherents of the path of Gyan are unable to perceive them. For example, the sun is a luminary that dispels the darkness of night. Although its luminous quality is easily understood, the inner and outer workings of the sun planet, the difference that exists between individual particles of light, and the specific distinguishing features of the innumerable atomic particles of light are all imperceptible to human eyes. Similarly, those who view the transcendent entity through the eyes of impersonal knowledge are unable to perceive the Lord's divine personal attributes. If, as previously described, one acquires transcendental vision by the special mercy of great devotees, one will be able to directly recognize the Lord's personal attributes. Otherwise, by realization of the impersonal existential Brahman, one will only attain the state of merging into that Brahman. So that's Anuched 214 of Bhakti Sandarbha. And Jiva Goswami continues. He says, this knowledge is stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 3. Swabhava dhyatmam uchyate. The inherent nature of the living entity is known as the self. The meanings of the words swabhav and adhyatma are as follows. Swa refers to the pure self, shuddha atma, and the word bhav refers to ascertainment. Hence, the ascertainment of the pure living entity as a unique individual, eternally related to the Supreme, is known as swabhav. When the self, when the atma, is made the principal subject of focus, and thus given the power to act in its proper function, it is known as adhyatma. It's Anuched 216. And just so that we understand what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, like how he's explaining this verse, he's first he explained Anukulena and Anushilan, and now he's explaining the word Krishna in that verse. So Krishna Anushilanam. And then he explains that the absolute truth is understood in three different aspects. Is understanding of his Brahman form, which one realizes through the cultivation of Gyan. And soon we're going to be reading about his Paramatma form, the super soul within the heart, which is realized through the process of yoga, Ashtanga yoga. And then, but this verse is not referring to that, either Brahman or Paramatma. But no, this verse is saying that bhakti is only done, it's only the only object of bhakti is the Sri Krishna, and so that's why he's explaining now. Gyan leads to Brahman. Yoga leads to realization of Paramatma, and Bhakti leads to realization of Bhagavan, Krishna, Shri Krishna. And so Gyan is just like understanding the luminosity of the sun, but Bhakti is like understanding all the attributes of the sun, what the sun is like inside and out, and all the different characteristics of the sun. So the purport of this of what Srila Jiva Goswami is saying here is that when spiritual knowledge is acquired through the process of negation, of neti neti, it is not this, it is not that. Bhagavan is not this, Bhagavan is not that. The absolute truth, which is transcendental to the illusory material potency, Maya, is realized only partially. The variegated aspect of transcendence, which lies much deeper within, is not realized. If one who follows this process meets a personalist, self-realized Vaishnava spiritual master, then only can he be protected from the impediment, the anartha of impersonalism. Those who pursue the path of yoga in the end arrive. So now he explains Gyan, now he's explaining yoga and Paramatma. So those who pursue the path of yoga in the end arrive only at the realization of the all-pervading Supersoul, Paramatma. They cannot attain realization of the Supreme Lord in his ultimate manifestation. Paramatma, Ishvar, personal Vishnu, and so on are the objects of research in the yoga process. In this process, we can find a few attributes of bhakti, but it is not unalloyed devotion. Generally, religious principles in this world that pass for the topmost spiritual path are all merely yoga processes that strive for realization of the Paramatma feature. We cannot expect that in the end, all of them will ultimately lead us to the topmost path, Bhagavat Dharma, because in the process of meditation, there are numerous obstacles before one finally realizes the absolute truth. Meditation is one of the primary, whatever practices in the yoga process is meditation. But in the process of meditation, there are numerous obstacles before one finally realizes the absolute truth. Besides, when after practicing either yoga or meditation for some time, one imagines that I am Brahman, there is the maximum possibility of falling into the trap of impersonal spiritual gyan. In this process, realization of the eternal form of Bhagavan and the variegated characteristics of transcendence is not available. The form that is imagined at the time of meditational worship, upasana, whether it be the gigantic form of the Lord conceived in the shape of the universe, or the four-armed form situated within the heart, whatever form you're meditating on, um, it is not eternal. This process is called Paramatma Darshan, realization of the Supersoul. Although this process is superior to the cultivation of impersonal Gyan, it is not the perfect and all-pleasing process. Ashtanga Yoga, we're adding in a song in the songbook. Srila Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura wrote all about the process of Ashtanga Yoga. I wonder if we should look at it. Anyways, nah. So Ashtanga Yoga, Hatha Yoga, and Karma Yoga, and all other yoga practices are included within this process. Although Raja or Adhyatma Yoga follows this process to a certain extent, in most cases it is merely included within the process of Gyan. The philosophical conclusion is that realization of the Supersoul cannot be called Shuddha Bhakti. In this regard, it is said in Bhakti Sandarbha, Antaryamitva Maya Shakti Prachura Chit Chit Shaktya Vishishtam Paramatmeti. Sorry. So after the creation of this universe, the expansion of the Supreme Lord, who enters it as the controller of material nature and who is situated as the maintainer of the creation, is known as Jagadishvar, the all-pervading Paramatma. His function is related more to displaying the external potency rather than the internal potency. Therefore, this aspect of the Absolute Truth is naturally inferior to the supreme and eternal Bhagavan aspect. This aspect of Bhagavan is related to this world. It's not related to the Lord in the spiritual world. It's just related to the Lord in this world. Yeah. his connection with this world, rather than his Bhagavan, which has no connection with this material world. The absolute truth is realized exclusively through the process of, sorry, the form of the absolute truth, realized exclusively through the process of bhakti, is called Bhagavan. In Bhakti Sandarbha, the characteristics of Bhagavan are described. Pari, Purna, Sarvashakti, Vishishta, Bhagavan iti. Paripurna, Sarvashakti, Vishishta, Bhagavan iti. Sorry. So the complete absolute truth, endowed with all transcendental potencies, is called Bhagavan. Okay, so that's a very simple definition of Bhagavan. Paramatma is not endowed with all the transcendental potencies. Brahman is not endowed with all the transcendental. Bhagavan is the absolute truth who's endowed with all transcendental potencies. I mean, of course, Brahman and Paramatma have transcendental potencies, but it doesn't have all of Bhagavan's transcendental potencies. After the creation, after the creation of the universe, Bhagavan enters it through the partial expansion as Paramatma. As Garbhodakshai, and so Paramatma, and then this is I remember Sundar Gopal from England. He once explained how Jiva Goswami explains this to me. What is it? Ah, I'll have to look at it. Um, I could find it actually really quickly. Anyways, let's just see this first. So after the creation of the universe, Bhagavan enters it through his partial expansion as Paramatma. And then how is that? As Garbhodakshai, he is situated as the supersoul of the complete universe. As Kshiradakshai, he is situated as a supersoul in the hearts of the living entities. And again, in direct distinction from the manifested material worlds, Bhagavan appears as the impersonal Brahman. Hence, Bhagavan is the original aspect of Godhead and the supreme absolute truth. I want to find that thing from Sundar Gopal because it was interesting. But yeah, isn't that neat? So Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the supersoul of the universe, and Kshiradakshai Vishnu is a supersoul within every living entity. And then Karnadakshai Vishnu is um how did he word it? I just want to see. What am I looking for? Give me 1 second. Oh yeah. Okay. 1 second. Just finding it. Okay. So Sundar Gopal explains that. So according to Srila Jiva Goswami, there are three Paramatmas or Paratmas. These three correspond with the metacosmic, that's the causal, the macrocosmic, the universal, and the microcosmic, the individual dimensions of being. The metacosmic, the macrocosmic, and the microcosmic. So you have the Paramatma of the total material creation, the Paramatma of the individual universes, and the Paramatma of each individual Atma, and indeed of each atomic particle. So that's what was just explained here, but I just liked how Sundar Gopal worded it here. Metacosmic, the causal, refers to Karnadaksha Vishnu. He's the Paramatma of the total material creation. And the macrocosmic, the universal, refers to Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who is the Paramatma of the individual universes. And then the microcosmic, the individual um, form of dimensions of being, which refers to Paramatma of each individual Atma and each atomic particle. So three Paramatmas. Okay, Again, in direct distinction from the manifested material worlds, Bhagavan appears as the impersonal Brahman. Hence, Bhagavan is the original aspect of Godhead and the supreme absolute truth. His intrinsic form, the Swarup Vigraha, is transcendental. Complete spiritual bliss resides in him. His potencies are inconceivable and beyond any reasoning. He cannot be fathomed by any process fabricated by the knowledge of the infinitesimal living entity, the jiva. By the influence of his inconceivable potency, the entire universe and all the living entities residing within it have manifested. Jivas manifesting from the marginal potency, the Tatastha Shakti of Bhagavan, become successful only by following the path of engaging exclusively in his loving transcendental service. Then, by the practice of chanting the holy name through Nam Bhajan, one can realize through one's transcendental eyes the unparalleled beauty of Bhagavan. The processes of Gyan and Yoga are incapable of approaching Bhagavan. When approached through the cultivation of impersonal knowledge, the Lord appears as the formless and effulgent impersonal Brahman. And if he is seen through the yoga process, he appears as Paramatma invested within this material creation. Bhakti is supremely pure. It is very painful for Bhakti, the personification of Bhakti. It is very painful for Bhakti Devi, who is a personification of Bhakti, to see the Supreme Personality in his lesser manifestations. If she sees this anywhere, she cannot tolerate it. Out of these three manifestations of the Absolute Truth, it is only the manifestation of Bhagavan's personal form that is the object of bhakti. But even within Bhagavan's personal manifestation, there is one important distinction. Where the internal potency, where the Swarup Shakti displays its complete opulence, Aishwarya, there Bhagavan appears as Vaikuntanath Narayan, the Lord of Vaikuntha, Narayan. And where the internal potency displays its supreme sweetness, its Madhurya, there Bhagavan appears as Sri Krishna. Despite being predominant almost everywhere, Aishwarya loses its charm in the presence of Madhurya. In the material world, we cannot draw such a comparison. No such example is visible anywhere. In the material world, Aishwarya is more influential than Madhurya. But in the spiritual world, it is completely the opposite. It is completely the opposite. There, Madhurya is superior and more influential than Aishwarya. Oh, my dear devotees, all of you just deliberate upon Aishwarya one time, and then afterwards lovingly bring sentiments of Madhurya into your hearts. By doing so, you will be able to understand this truth. It's interesting though, huh? He says first we must deliberate on Aishwarya one time. If we don't understand the Aishwarya, then we won't be able to appreciate the Madhurya. We'll take the Madhurya cheaply. But once you have understood the Aishwarya, once you've understood the opulence of Krishna's form, and like once you're established in that, then you'll have the foundation to enter into the Madhurya of Bhagavan, and then you won't need the Aishwarya anymore. Then just lovingly bring your sentiments all to Madhurya into your hearts. By doing so, you'll be able to understand the truth. Just as in the material world, when the sun rises and consumes the moonlight, similarly, a taste of the sweetness of Madhurya appears in a devotee's heart. Then he no longer finds Aishwarya to be tasteful. Śrīla Rupa Goswami has written in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-59. Siddhantatas tvabhedepi Shrisha Krishna Sarupayo Rasinot Krishyate Krishna Rupam Esha Rasastiti. So Rupa Goswami says, although from the existential viewpoint, Narayan and Krishna are non-different, Krishna is superior due to possessing more ras. By tattva, they're one, but by ras, Krishna is superior. Such is the glory of ras tattva. This topic will be made clear later in this discussion. But for now, it is okay. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying this topic will be made clear later in this discussion. But for now, it is essential to understand that the favorable cultivation activities meant to please Sri Krishna, anukulyena anushilanam, is the sole intrinsic characteristic. That is the sole Sarup Lakshan of Bhakti. Thus, this confirms the same statement made in the verse under discussion from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, number 11, that verse, Anyabhilashita Shunyam. Okay, so that was his explaining of the Sarup Lakshan of Bhakti. Now he's going to explain lines 1 and 2, the Tatastha Lakshan of Bhakti. Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyanavartam. To remain devoid of desires separate from the desire to please Sri Krishna. That's Anyabhilashita. And free from the coverings of Jnana and Karma. Jnana Karma Dhyanavartam. These are the marginal characteristics. These are the Tatastha Lakshan of Bhakti. Vishnu Bhakti Pravakshyami Yaya Sarvam Avapyate. In this half verse from Bhakti Sandarbha, the marginal characteristics of Bhakti, the Tatastha Lakshan of Bhakti, are reviewed. Its meaning is that by the practice of the aforementioned Vishnu Bhakti, the living entity can attain everything. The desire to attain something is called abhilashita. From the word abhilashita, one should not derive the meaning that the desire to progress in bhakti and to ultimately reach its perfectional stage is also to be rejected. No, we're not just supposed to be devoid of any desire, but through the practice of sadhan bhakti, I will one day attain the elevated stage of bhav. So it is the highly commendable, so this sentiment, it is highly commendable for a devotee to maintain such a desire, that through my practice of sadhan bhakti, I will one day attain the elevated stage of bhav. But apart from this desire, all other types of desire are fit to be rejected. There are two types of separate desire. There is the desire for sense gratification, bhukti, and the desire for liberation, mukti, or freedom from suffering. So wanting to enjoy and wanting to not suffer. These are the two. So Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-22. Bhukti mukti spiha yavat pishachi hridi vartate tavar bhakti sukasyatra katham abhyudayo bhavit. As long as the two witches of the desires for bhukti and mukti remain in a devotee's heart, not even a fraction of the pure happiness derived from Sarup Siddha Bhakti will arise. Sarup Siddha Bhakti means all favorable endeavors, such as hearing, chanting, remembrance, and so on, as well as the manifestation of spiritual sentiments which occur beginning from the stage of bhav, which are completely devoid of all desires separate from Krishna and which are freed from the coverings of jnana and karma. This is known as Sarup Siddha Bhakti. It's natural perfected state of bhakti. In other words, all endeavors of the body, mind, and words that are related to Sri Krishna and are performed exclusively and directly for his pleasure without any intervention, this is known as Sarup Siddha Bhakti. Basically, this verse, Anyabhilashita Shunyam, is a definition of it's intrinsically perfect bhakti. So this will arise as long as the two witches of the desires of bhukti, material enjoyment, and mukti, wanting freedom from suffering, remain in a devotee's heart. And as long as these two desires remain, then not even a fraction of the pure happiness derived from Sarup Siddha Bhakti will arise. Both bodily and mental enjoyment are considered bhukti. To make an extraneous effort to remain free from disease or to desire palatable foodstuffs, strength and power, wealth, followers, wife, children, fame, and victory, these are all considered bhukti. And then to desire to take one's next birth in a Brahmin family or in a royal family, to attain residence in the heavenly planets or in Brahmaloka, or to obtain any other type of happiness in one's next life is also considered bhukti. Practice of the eightfold yoga system and to desire the 8 or 18 varieties of mystic perfections are categorized as bhukti. The greed for bhukti forces the living entity to become subordinate to the 6 enemies headed by lust and anger. Envy easily takes over the heart of the living entity and rules it. Hence, to attain unalloyed devotion, one has to remain completely aloof from the desires for bhukti. To abandon the desire for bhukti, a conditioned soul need not reject the objects of the senses by going to reside in the forest. Merely going to reside in the forest or accepting the dress of a renunciate, of a sannyasi, will not free one from the desire for bhukti. If bhakti resides in a devotee's heart, then even while living amidst the objects of the senses, he will be able to remain detached from them and will be capable of abandoning the desire for bhukti. We see the example of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, right? Externally, he looks like a big time enjoyer, materialist, with his golden spittoon and his pillows, the pillows on his couch, which were as white as foam or milk, I think, or forgot what it said. But yeah, but then when Mukunda recited a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, then immediately he threw like that. We read that in Chaitanya Bhagavat. I think that was the last chapter of Chaitanya Bhagavat, actually, or second to the last. I think it was the last. No. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. Anyways, but if if bhakti resides in a devotee's heart, then even while living amidst the objects of the senses, he'll be able to remain detached from them and will be capable of abandoning the desire for bhukti. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2, 254 to 256, Ruchim udvahatastattra janasya bhajane hare vishayeshu garishtopi raga prayo viliyate anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjata nirbandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyamuchyate prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubhi parityago vairagyam falgukatyate. So these are very, especially that middle verse I hear all the time, anasaktasya vishayan. That's the definition of yukta vairagya, this middle verse, right? Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjita. So in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami says in these 3 verses, when the living entity develops a taste for Krishna bhajan, at that time, his excessive attachment for the objects of the senses starts gradually fading. And now this is the definition of yukta vairagya. Then, with the spirit of detachment, he accepts the objects of the senses only according to his needs, knowing those objects to be related to Krishna and behaving accordingly. This is called yukta vairagya. The renunciation of those who, desiring liberation from matter, reject the objects of the senses, considering them to be illusory, is called falgu, or useless. It is not possible for an embodied soul to completely renounce the objects of the senses. But changing the enjoying tendency towards them, while maintaining an understanding of their relation to Krishna, cannot be called sense gratification. So we want to use all things in Krishna service. All material objects, everything is meant for Krishna service. And so you try to use everything like that. Not that we just try to reject all material objects. But we see that, no, it's all related to Krishna. We need to use it in Krishna service. Form, rup, taste, ras, smell, gandha, touch, sparsha, and sound, shabda, are the objects of the senses. We'll stop at the end of this section. I see it's 1 minute till 8. So we should try to perceive the world in such a way that everything appears related to Krishna, meaning that we should see all living entities as servants and maidservants of Krishna. See gardens and rivers as pleasurable sporting places for Krishna. See that all types of eatables are to be used as an offering for his pleasure. In all types of aromas, perceive the aroma of Krishna Prasad. And in the same way, see that all types of flavors are to be relished by Krishna. See that all the elements we touch are related to Krishna. And hear only narrations describing the activities of Krishna or his great devotees. When a devotee develops such an outlook, then he will no longer see the objects of the senses as being separate from Bhagavan himself. The tendency to enjoy the happiness obtained from sense gratification intensifies. The tendency to enjoy the happiness obtained from sense gratification intensifies the desire for bhakti within the heart of a devotee, and ultimately deviates him from the path of bhakti. On the other hand, by accepting all the objects of this world as instruments to be employed in Krishna's service, the desire for bhakti is completely eradicated from the heart, thus allowing unalloyed devotion to manifest there. To see how. Okay, let's read this next paragraph also. As it is imperative to abandon the desire for bhakti, it is equally important to abandon the desire for mukti, liberation. There are some very deep principles and conceptions regarding mukti. 5 types of mukti are mentioned in the scriptures. Salokya sarshi samipya sarupaikatam apyuta diyamanam nagrindanti vina mat sevanam jana. At Srimad Bhagavatam 3:29-13. And so now Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explained in depth bhakti, and now he's going to explain mukti. And then let's see, how does this chapter end? So then he's explained Anyabilashita Shunyam and Jnana Karma Dhyanavartam. And then he'll talk about Shraddha. Anyhow, we will finish this chapter tomorrow. Let's just see how this chapter ends. I'll just read this. So, Shri Krishna is I'm just reading the last paragraph of this chapter, and then we'll end for today. Shri Krishna is a complete, all-pervading consciousness who always possesses all potencies. And the jiva is the infinitesimal conscious entity who is likened to a single particle of light situated within a ray of the unlimited spiritual sun. The natural and unadulterated endeavor of the infinitesimal conscious entity towards the complete consciousness is called bhakti. The living entity's persistence towards anyabilash, acting to fulfill the desire other than the desire to please Krishna, Gyan, the cultivation of knowledge aimed at impersonal liberation, and karma, fruit of activity, is called acquiring material designation. We should understand that the natural inherent endeavor of the jiva can only mean the favorable cultivation of activities to please Sri Krishna. And then that ends this chapter, and then begins the chapter 2, an analysis of the semblance of bhakti, bhakti abhas. We're going to hear about all the different types of mixed bhakti and also pratibimba bhakti and chaya bhakti. And I'm not sure if arop-siddha bhakti and sangha-siddha bhakti and then is also explained in this chapter. I don't know. We'll see though. But now I'm getting a better understanding of this first chapter. I think I'll be able to do a summary of it tomorrow and not just reread everything like we did. Yeah. So, all right, that's our program for today. Thank you for letting me go a few minutes over time. We'll end here. I'll just do a very short Mahamantra and Jadvani, and if anybody has any thoughts they can share. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. जय श्री सच्चिनंदन गौर हरि की जय श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय श्री गुरुदेव की जय श्री परम गुरुदेव की जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय श्री रूपानु गौरी गुरु वर्ग की जय स्वपाशा श्री गौर नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपिकान की जय श्री गिरिराज महाराज की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय श्री भक्ति तत्व विवेक की जय श्री भक्ति देवी की जय जय श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि गो वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवाश च कृष्ण भक्ति प्रद देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Dandavat pranams, everybody. Okay, I just went 1 minute over time. I mean, because I started 5 minutes late. So and now it's 8:06. But yeah, usually I try not to start late. I'm sorry about that. Um, Dandavat pranams, Liri Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Sarveshwari Mataji, Yashoda Mataji, Janava Didi, Anadi Krishna Prabhu, Pradyumna Prabhu, Mantaramurti Mataji, Chattamai Mataji, Gokuleshwari Didi, Ashray Tattva Prabhu, Nitai Mukesh Ji. I already said Anadi Krishna, right? I think so. Ganga Mataji, Raseshwari Mataji, Indira Mataji, and I'm guessing maybe Rohini Nandan Prabhu is there. I don't know. There are a bunch of devotees on YouTube and Facebook, so pranams to all of you. I'm not ignoring any of you. It's just if you don't write a comment, then I don't see your name. And also pranams to all the devotees watching in the future. Haribol. So yeah, is there anything anybody wants to mention before we end the stream? Yes, Sarveshwari Mataji.
What's the connection that you mentioned? Sorry, of Bhajana Rasya and Harinama Chintamana? You say that it was the original name of Bhajana Rasya. Just wanted to.
Oh, yeah, if I remember correctly, in the introduction, Srila Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura says that this Harinam Chintamani is written only in simple Bengali verses. He wants to make it. He said, he wanted to make it accessible to everybody, not just Sanskrit scholars and like that. So he wanted to make it more accessible. So it's only Bengali verses. But then there's another book which will be published. He writes in the introduction, another book which will be published soon called the Praman Mala, which will have all verses from all over, all scriptural evidences from everywhere, which will back up every single word of this Harinam Chintamani. And then that book ended up becoming Bhajan Rahasya later on. So originally, Bhajan Rahasya was just supposed to be like like a part of like a, I don't know, supplement or something like that to Harinam Chintamani. But then I think Srila Bhaktivinoda, my guess is that it became more than just a book of verses of evidence to back up Harinam Chintamani. It just became its own thing. And so then he gave it the name Bhajan Rahasya. That's how I understand it. Yeah. All right. Um, all right. If there's nothing else, then we'll end for today. Thank you so much for joining. Haribol.